tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
And welcome to
Dave!
And Mecky, a shiny side out of WCCR, coming to you from Australia from Revolutionary Radio, Fusions.com and Revolution.radio. That's true, you know. It's home to fresh, unadulterated ideas and conversations in the chat room, and a place to get your merch. This is a show with a number. 517?
33.
That's what I said. 533. 533. 330 and 500. That's many shows. Hey! And you can catch us on air, online, and on your smart device. That's the kind of guys we are, and that's the time we're living in. So grab an app to listen anywhere, or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop Digital Radio. Maybe you can write your own app. If you are able to do that, you should be rich. If you missed a lot of the show, that's okay, because you can go to the archives for free, gratis, no money down. Just go into the archives and check it out. Today she had a round table. I caught probably the last few moments of it because I was out at the birthday party. However, she had Matt Painter, she had Wally, Bill Grant, and Dude Guy, which is pretty cool. And like I said, I just caught the last few snippets. Sounded like a pretty cool show. I mean, there's actually it's a pretty good roundtable, to be honest with you. So that would be fun to listen to. So if you missed it, go ahead and get to the archives on the station's website. Okay, and you can check out not just her show, but a whole bunch of shows from a whole bunch of hosts going back a whole bunch of years, which is awesome.
Including ours.
Dave. We also have a show, Dave and I. It's called
What?
Sign Out. That's right. What? 11 years?
Yeah, I'm having an out-of-body experience.
Going on 12. Okay, so let's just do the math just for a second in the intro here, right? So you said 533, is that right?
That's correct.
That's what you said.
So 52, 10.
52 is 10.
That's
so
right.
we're in the 11th year.
And you have to realize that the New Year show and the Christmas Eve show, the Christmas Day show, never happened. So
yeah, that's
we're
true.
Actually a little longer than that.
That is true. So we're probably 10 and a half, I reckon. We're marching strongly into our 12th year.
Absolutely true there.
On air. And I'd just like to, just for a second before we finish the intro, I'd like to spend just a moment thinking of all the hosts and behind the scenes people that are no longer with us here. I just want to quickly mention them. Paula Hayes, Michael Hamilton, Wolf Pole, Susan Assen Ace, Anna Alice Princess, Dave Corson, Wolf Spirit, Royce Holman, Redneck Radio Man, Pamela Koppel, Elusia, Brian Rios, host, Olive Tuam, also host, Dr. Robin Falkov, host, Benja Pickengal, Sherry Shrinker, A. Truotz, co-host, Mike, the founder, of course, Nighthawk, Steve Moreau, Rectify, Bobby Vicarious, Jordan James Gianni Noto, Reggae Girl, John Shuck, Love, Jerry B, and Bill Hayes as well. Actually, that's it. No, that's a massive list of the last 10 years in loving memory, and we do miss all of you. Before we start broadcasting in your anger, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. For Dave,
Dark and John.
and for me, it's the Dark People, and we would like to pay our respects to elders, past, present, and future. It has been a long time since we've been doing this, and it makes you reflective, especially when you look at all the people that were there when we were there and were there for a while we were here and then are not anymore. And then it puts you in mind of thinking, well, what is it all about? What's the point of it all? Why are we here? What's going on? Does it make any difference? What is the bigger picture, right? Mm-hmm. And what Dave and I have been trying to do for the last 10 years, let's call it 10 years, to round it down, is to maybe give you a helping hand in trying to figure it all out. right? Now, do we have the answers? No, of course not. We've got some answers. We've got some speculation. I'm not saying that we have a monopoly on the truth, but I'm still yet to find someone, Dave, that has a better hypothesis than we do.
Mm-hmm.
Across the board, and it's not hubris talking. I'm not being full of myself, or not as Dave. But I mean, we've done this for a long time. We've interviewed a lot of people. We've spoken to a lot of people that I thought I would never speak to. People whose documentaries I watched, whose books I read, and I was privileged to be able to speak to them directly via this show. And a lot of the researchers, truth seekers, alternative historians, whatever you want to call us as a group, come to very similar conclusions. Not exactly the same, but we come to very similar landing places, where you realize that first of all, the interconnectedness of everything, and it really is, and secondly, where we probably are, where we most likely are, and just how much of a lie has been pulled over our eyes, right? And that is really the one thing that should make us angry. But what it should do, it should motivate us to understand more, learn more, just expose the truth. That it should really motivate us. It should really make us want to understand more. And it's really tough, Dave, because a lot of information is just kept from us completely. And we get snippets, right, Dave? We get snippets here and there. There's the things that are sort of shining through the wallpaper, as it were, right? The little cracks in the walls. There's the light here and there poking through. Information that is just hinted at, or is sometimes just blatantly stated, but nobody hears it, so it might as well not have been said. Only a few people pick it up, and then
because it doesn't make the news cycle.
It doesn't make the news cycle, exactly. And if you don't have the information, you can't integrate it into a coherent, holistic picture of reality. And that's
so think about having skipped the last however many 11 years of those stories that we uncovered. If you didn't get those stories, imagine where you'd be right now. I mean, I have to say that we're probably in the truth as wall covering our, being pulled over our eyes. We're not seeing the real truth. The truth is only the message, and the message isn't the truth. We've seen, social media clamp down on. They used to call it alternate truth.
It's the alternative truth. It's over here.
Yeah, and then you end up with the Ministry of Disinformation in America, and we're setting up a very similar, state here, or status, where the question is, well, how can we stop all of this mis and disinformation? Isn't it the Ministry of Truth making it from the book?
That's right. The Ministry for Truth.
Yeah. Thanks.
When as soon as there's a ministry for something, it's not going anywhere. So it's a Ministry for Education. That's going down the gurgler. Ministry for Truth.
Yeah, because the product is the opposite of the title. So, Mekki, when we read through I took my hat off. I'm not wearing a hat, but figuratively. I took my hat off to those who we'd seen over the last 11 years or 10 years perish, or go to the place not made with hands, right? Jose Escamilla.
Yes.
Also
Lloyd Pye.
Yeah, Lloyd Pye, Jim Mars, and Stanton Friedman.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, Stanton Friedman.
To name a few. But we didn't even get Phil on, and
I know
he died before he came on air.
Yeah.
And it's a tragedy that there's so many people in this let's say in the truth business, and researchers who have lost their lives. There's a lot, and I have to say it statistically significant amount of people.
It's disproportionate. Like if you look at the people, just like again from both people involved with the station, but also from our guests' perspective, it seems to be a disproportionate number of people that have passed, all things being equal.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to all these microbiologists all of a sudden, it's dying over the past 20 years prior to 2020 in quite significant numbers, and not just any old ones, but the top of their field.
Oh, and Mickey, I forgot to mention Clifford Stone.
Clifford Stone, yes.
As well as one of the other guests that's passed away.
Yeah.
We got 2 really good interviews out of him.
Yes,
I shouldn't say we got it out of. He was someone I followed for a long time, and we were lucky enough to have him back in 2015 on the show.
Yeah.
And sadly he's passed. It just, when we were doing the shows about the microbiologists and how we've lost so many microbiologists in the lead up, and of course while we were in the midst of the coronavirus too, this became one of our top show arcs, and now we're seeing. I'm derailing it a little, Becky, but just saying that now the monkeypox is there, and if you've had smallpox vaccine, it's the same effect. It will eliminate the monkeypox. You won't acquire monkeypox. So that's good. The things that are coming about now, and I've been doing some research into the current pox. I don't want to keep saying the same keyword. That there's an inordinate amount of mutations. Normally 5 to 6 throughout a year is expected, but this has had 47 in the last year.
It's unusual.
And the type of mutation is not the normal mutation either. And I'm going to share a video with Mekis during the week, and so we can catch up on this, because this is I watched it this morning, and I'm kind of I keep hearing the wise words of Bill Gates and his warning, saying the next pandemic will be worse. And I keep thinking to myself, all right, well, the Davos group has just met, and now we have the Bilderberg group meeting and designing our future. Yeah. And they want to track our carbon use now, is what the World Economic Forum has decided they're going to do. But to do that, they must know every single last thing about our lives. And that's kind of a problem. So we've just survived an election in which I think we're going to see Australia really clamping down on carbon emissions, and let's hope they're only focusing on net new carbon. But I wonder if we've learnt our virus lesson, because we haven't closed our border. We now have it in this country, this new pox, and you can get it by touching the material or clothing or bedding or seat that a person who has had sores, who's leaked ooze onto those materials, and you can get it from that. Yeah, it's icky sounding, but yeah, it's there. It's a real threat. And don't say it's fake. I don't want to hear anyone say it's fake. Because this is the kind of thing, Mickey, if you had the pox and you walked into a grocery store, people could see it. It's not like the old Rona, where by wearing a mask and going in and exiting, that you couldn't tell who had it. It may as well just turn your skin blue.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's evident. But here when we're in winter, it's not a good time because everyone's covered up. I think we should be perpetually wary of all of these things that are going on. And now we have one of the worst flu seasons, not in the last 2 years because they were really low. This is worse than our max year all those years ago right now. So, when it comes around to your turn, make sure you've already taken precautions. I know that when Mackie goes out, he's still masked up because it's pertinent. I think we have to learn to do this. At what point, I wonder, Mackie, I'm handing it back to you, do you think it is when we don't do this anymore?
Look, the reason I'm doing it, just to put it in perspective, I've got people in my family that are immunocompromised.
Yeah.
I'm not taking any chances. Hoaxes or no hoax, I don't care. But I'll tell you something in answer to your question. I used to travel a lot for work pre-COVID.
Yes.
And I mean a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And all over the world, the Americas, Asia, some trips to Europe.
I never knew where you were going to be next.
Yeah, yeah, I know, right? And sometimes I was able to broadcast from those locations. But
That's
the
right.
point I'm trying to make is in Southeast Asia especially, right? And even Greater China, mask wearing is a thing in the bigger cities. It's just what people do, right? So that was we're talking like in the noughties and the teens, as well. People just wore masks in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Hanoi, Bangkok, all those places, right? Fairly large population centers. They have other things to worry about. They're not just COVID, obviously. But back then, it's malaria, hepatitis, a whole bunch of things that are out there in the wild. India as well. Oh, India to a lesser extent, though. Interesting enough, not many masks in India, but Southeast Asia definitely. So to your question, I think for some people it'll never end. I think some people will continue to wear masks because that's just what they do.
Well,
in Asia.
I'm entering into that realm now.
Yeah.
Because of my daughter.
You also have
immunocompromised
people in your family, right?
That's right.
So even if forget COVID, right? Forget that for a second, right?
Mm-hmm.
But simple things like the flu or other diseases that could spread via the respiratory tract, right? Or globules of spit or whatever. You what do? You don't want to get your family or your loved ones into unnecessary danger, right? You don't want to do that. So you wear a mask. That's what people have done pre-SARS-CoV-2 in certain areas of the world. And I can see it here in Australia. It's really interesting. I'm talking Sydney specifically, but Sydney's the biggest city. We've got 5-6 million people. So I guess, it's a pretty good chunk of the Australian population that lives here. When I go around the city, and I have various places I go to do my shopping, simply because of the things I want to buy. So I go from way out west. I go south. I go in the middle. Inner west. I go east. I go north. But and I cover in a day. I can cover up to 100 kilometers worth of driving for shopping on a Saturday, for example. Right? That's not unheard of. But in the west, right, which is generally speaking more working class, people are masked up.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. It's just a thing, right? And then you go further east, a lot less masks.
That's right.
In fact, significantly less masks than previously. And then you keep going, further and further, and then until there are no masks at all. Right out in the east, in the middle, in the Midwest, it's already Midwest, but they call it inner West. There's this, it's probably 40 to 50% mask wearing, and then once you hit the eastern suburbs, Woollahra and so forth, I'd say maybe 5% mask wearing. So there seems to be a socioeconomic not a rift, but I guess a risk
Look, consider it, Mickey. So if you're
Yeah.
working paycheck to paycheck, you can't risk being laid down with the flu.
Yeah, well, that's it. Exactly.
So
Right?
yeah,
So people are a bit more, I guess, a bit more risk happy where they have more money.
that's right, and risk adverse where they don't.
100%. So that's essentially where we are with that, and I think that might be the case into the future. We still So this is really interesting, and last year and the year before, so in 20 and 21, we had daily briefings, and people would tell us exactly when people got sick, or how many people were sick, how many people died. And I said this before, and I'll say it one more time here. So these are the official numbers. Back then, it was considered bad. The hospital system could break, etc., etc. I mean, the disease itself wasn't that terrible, but it was just labor intense when it came to care. So we didn't have enough beds, as it were, to look after people in intensive care if we hadn't flattened the curve. Right now, between January 1 and now, right, which is now in June now, more people have died than in the 2 preceding years in Australia, allegedly of SARS-CoV-2. More people in the last 6 months than in the preceding 24 months. Same goes with infections. Our infection rates are through the roof if you compare it to the previous 2 years. Yet, mask mandates are gone. We have opened up. Yes, there's vaccines. Absolutely, that's true. Also, no daily briefings. Nobody talks about the death rate. It has completely disappeared off the news cycles. Completely. Gone. Nothing. Zero. Nada. Zilch. I find this astounding. I really do. I mean, but so we don't have a problem anymore. Clearly, that's my takeaway here, right? But of course we do. Of course we do. And now with the flu coming in.
Remember the messaging. It's living with COVID.
Exactly.
But there are countries in the world, Mackie, that are still endeavouring to have zero COVID. But I think they just opened up Shanghai now in China.
That's correct.
Yep.
Well,
do you think that they've caved on it?
Not completely.
No.
Right. So somewhat, but yes, they have somewhat opened up Shanghai again. If they caved, I don't know.
Pivoted.
Well, yeah, I think that's probably. I think pivoted is probably right.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have pivoted toward a more relaxed attitude. Not completely relaxed, mind you, but more relaxed than before. So look, my point here is though that there will not be a time when the masks are gone, because this has now become a thing. After 2 years, you formed a habit, and the habit now is mask wearing. That's essentially where we are. Okay, that's just what it is. We have no. We have to learn to live with it, so they won't come off. If you're not wearing a mask now, then you probably won't be wearing a mask. If you're wearing a mask now, then you probably will continue to wear a mask.
That's a good point.
Future. Right? I think that's where, in my opinion, at least, that's where it'll stay. And, I think it's fascinating, really, too, just to see where we are with all of this.
Yeah, look, the cross section of society point that you made is really interesting too, about who and who doesn't. And look, sporting events are open, stadiums are full, the bars and the restaurants are all open, the hairdressers are available again. Yeah. It seems like it's life as normal. But how quickly do you think that this could turn around if suddenly there were outbreaks again, not of the Rona, but rather of pox or something else that's lurking in the shadows?
Oh, 100%.
Because I think we've finally turned the page to the endless war that's back on now, because that's in the media every day now. The war in Ukraine.
100%.
We have the imposition of us having to stay in small communities because of fuel costs. And I've said this before, and I think it's important just to mention one more time, and that is, in the past, Saudi Arabia was cooperative as part of OPEC and would increase the output of oil, which would bring the price down. Now I think it's a concerted effort across the globe to manufacture a situation where it doesn't go down. And we're looking at a double-edged sword of inflation, where inflation is both caused by all the borrowing and by all the transportation of all the goods, because the petrol's more expensive. Or sorry, the fuel is more expensive. And you know, I remember, Meki, before all of this was going on, we had elderly who had to make a choice of running the heater or not.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was too cold. We're lucky in Australia that it isn't too cold that you can die from the cold. It's not like it's, North Dakota or something where it's going to get, sub-zero, and if you don't run the heater, you're going to die. But still, having said that, I think we're entering in at least into this. It's almost page by page, isn't it, of 1984?
Well, it is.
What's the next chapter?
It's a boot stomping on a human face. Well,
Yeah, that's right.
not really looking forward to that one, to be honest. But yeah.
So with the perpetual war, we've got we're playing by the handbook that was written back then in 1948. We've got the first time in history, Meki, where big corporates, multinational, huge, the largest companies in the world have designed themselves into the new world order as the leaders of the world order. I really thought it would have been an organization that was voted upon, but silly me.
No.
No.
You're funny.
I'm funny. I'll be here all week.
This is not a democracy. No, look.
That's going to keep me laughing all week.
I know, right? No, we are now at again, for a little while now, we're at the nexus point of history. We are firmly in the next 10 to 15 years will determine the next 200 years, in my opinion. Okay, and what do I mean by that? Well,
this is like a world economic power shift, change of who's at the top.
Yes,
the king of the hill battles going on right now.
Yeah, I want to give you an example as to what that means, and how it happened before.
Mm-hmm.
In 1476, I want to say, or 1470. I think it's 1476. Let me just double check.
I used to wear an onion on my belt.
It was, I think it was 1476. Actually 1492, I think. Sorry, I lied to you. 1453. 1453, May 29. What happened? The city of Constantinople was captured by the Ottoman Empire. Okay? And it determined the course of history for the next 500 years. Thereabouts. Oh, well, certainly. Certainly 400 years with the Ottoman Empire now encroaching up on Europe. So Vienna was besieged. There was another nexus point here. Vienna was besieged in the 17th century. But it was the Turks were repelled.
Mm-hmm.
If the Turks had won, the Battle of Vienna, as it were, then the history of Europe would have taken a very, very different turn. That was in 1683. Yes, it took them a couple hundred years to work up the courage to go all the way into Europe. Well, as far as I guess Western Europe. So the fall of Constantinople determined the next few hundred years. The resilience of Vienna determined the preceding. Sorry, the following couple of hundred years, and it's similarly with the outcome of World War I, and then of course the outcome of World War II. And we are still living in the aftermath of the outcome of World War II. And now we're at a new nexus point where the activities over the next 15 years, 10 to 15 years, will determine how we're going to live the next 200 years. Simply because they're going to be monumental shifts. So we will have to deal with a whole bunch of stuff. And I don't care if people don't believe in any of this. They are real enough for people to take action and undertake certain activities. So one is climate change. Our activity or inactivity or prevention thereof or non-prevention thereof will determine a great chunk of the world's population's future. The apparent rise of China and the geopolitical machinations underway to shore up the old alliances, which is doomed to fail. Empires do tumble, empires come to an end. The American empire is coming to an end. It doesn't know it yet. Still be around the United States of America, don't get me wrong, but China's star is rising in many ways. And what will that mean? How will that change the way we live? And once that happens, I mean, you can ask someone from a subject, Dave, of the British Empire. How would you feel at the turn of the century, like 1902 or 1903, let's call it, right? When the signs were already clear, the writing was on the wall. How would you feel if the British Empire ceased to exist and they would say, I laugh at you, you fool, it'll never, it's the empire where the sun never sets, ha 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 ha. Mm-hmm. British Empire is forever. Well, clearly not. But that's where we are today. I mean, ultimately, life goes on. Life goes on. So the British Empire sort of, saw its power wane. It still has the Commonwealth Games, but it doesn't really hold any true geopolitical power, right? Not like the United States or China do, even Russia to some extent, right? So the United States will go a similar way, most likely, and other powers will rise. Eventually, China will, also see the end of its empire or the end of its, prime period. It might last a little longer, maybe not. But it all depends. And the key thing, though, is that life does go on, right? And if you look at the world today, I mean, do you care that the British Empire is no longer as strong as it once was? Do you care that the Spanish Empire is no longer as strong as it once was? Do you care that that the Roman Empire is gone and is now gone these past 1,500 years? Now, for the Romans, it would have been, I guess, impossible to imagine and hard to comprehend that could happen. It did, though, right? It did happen. So it's just life. It's history. So you can't live in the past. You have to live whichever hand you're dealt. And that's where we are now, right? But what hand we are dealt is dependent upon what we all do.
So right now, the geopolitical landscape is the most tumultuous it's been in quite a long time.
Yeah.
And in parallel to how crazy this is right now, where there are no steps towards peace, they're all, in fact, in exactly the opposite direction. And we're going to be coming to a junction where there's very little. I love the leader. Yeah, says nobody. And by the way, Mickey, I love the leader.
I love the leader more.
Yeah, I'm loving the leader right now. So decisions will need to be made, and I still firmly believe that we are in a negatively impactful side of the galactic plane where this is the hell for beneath the plane, and above it it's prosperity. And I believe this I think it's cyclical. I think it happens on a basis as the Mayans predicted. It's like that they're against our best judgment. all of these, every single choice we're making right now is the negative one.
Mhm.
So geopolitically, everyone believes that they're the only one, and everyone is so belligerent that there are very few options that will remain when we get to the point where it's the last option.
Yes.
And I'm kind of proud to have, and I have to say this in arrears, right? But no one will be able to hear it. So I'm kind of glad that I'm here now. As in all the other times. The 50s would have been an absolute blast. That would have been so much fun to have been here during the 50s. Then only to be disappointed by the 60s. Because that changed everything. Then the 60s morphed into the 70s, and then the disco came, and then we saw Hypercolor in the 80s, right? And just the punctuation, right, of all these different times, and then we saw computers change everything, and now we're completely in control. We're being controlled by the tech that we love so much. I never thought that would happen. I really never thought that we would be walking around with the internet in our pocket, as all of those prophecies, Mackie, it's a segue, told us would happen.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Argument. So this is really interesting, right? So again, space-time, as far as I'm concerned, we don't understand at all. Not even sure that's a thing. And if it is a thing, it is broken. Or, like I said, it works in completely different ways to what we think it does. Because prophecy is not possible unless there is some kind of lead through. But I like to think of it the way the Aborigines probably would think, and many First Nations people, as the every when, which is, well, there's really no yesterday or tomorrow or there's a today. There's the eternal now. But the eternal now is all encompassing, right? And we have a really hard time understanding that, which is cool. I dig it, right? And it is really hard to understand, no doubt, because we just not built that way. We just not. So we find it very, very difficult to comprehend what it actually means, the everywhere. So there's no yesterday, there's no tomorrow. You only have the now, but you have access to all of now, as it were, right? You don't have to apportion it to a moment lived at a time. Imagine yourself as living your entire life all at once. There's really no death.
Mm-hmm.
There's no beginning, no end. You're just aware. You just exist in totality. And it's a completely different mode of existence to what we're used to. So really, I mean, we can talk about it a lot. We can intellectualize about it. But we cannot understand it at all. I know.
That's kind of the way I think when I'm watching Lord of the Rings director's cut.
Yeah, fair enough.
12 hours.
That's exactly right. But it's similar to I guess concepts like infinity or eternity. Now we can say these words,
mm-hmm.
right? I can say infinite, I can say eternal, I can say that, but it has no meaning. It means nothing. I can talk about the abstract term, but I cannot understand it.
Infinity plus one.
You win. Yeah, that's you can't, because it's our brains just cannot understand infinity or eternity. It just makes no sense. Again, we can say the words, and this is similar to every one of the concept of existence, mm-hmm. everlasting. And because there is no time per se, we can't say simultaneous because it makes no sense. It's just what it is, right? That's probably the best way to put it. It is just what it is. And you know what's really interesting? It is what it is. You know who said that in similar?
Descartes?
No. I know it's going to be left field, Dave.
All right. Popeye the Sailor Man. I am what I am.
God said that. I am what I am. Yahweh. I am what I am. What should I call you? I am what I am. Okay, it is what it is.
Will I am?
Like Will I am, not quite. Of course.
He's
No,
half
but
God.
I am what I am is that's probably the best encapsulation of everyone. I am what I am. Meaning, I have not become. I am not going to be. I am.
Mm-hmm.
But as an eternal kind of stretched out thing. So there's no becoming. And there's no going to be. So I did not start somewhere, and I'm not going to end up somewhere else. I just am, and I am what I am.
So
And that's how
Mickey,
God described
yeah.
himself. So yeah, go ahead.
yeah. So if I'm playing a video game and the sprite inside the video game became sentient enough to want to know where it came from and who I was in the game, and I could say the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm not in your world. I'm not there. I'm outside of this. And if I keep, and you know me, I've said this over the last 11 years or 10 years, and that is the world that we live in, while it appears real for all intents and purposes, if there was a multiverse and a place outside it, and if reincarnation was you returning back to outside of this world, I don't mean the planet Earth, but I mean outside of this universe, and like the coins on the machine and the people in a queue waiting to play, and the next time you jump back into the game again, you retained maybe a little bit of memory. That's pretty much it. That's kind of what I see this entire endeavor to be.
Yeah.
So, because time restarts in a video game, back to the beginning, and you just play through. And I kind of liken it to everything to this, to our view of what it would be like if you could be outside of the game and then enter in at any point. What was that movie, Mickey, where the sprites become sentient?
Oh,
Save, what's his name?
was it with Adam Sandler?
No, not Adam Sandler, the other guy.
I can't think of it.
Yeah, Save Ben or something. What was it?
Let's say it is. let's just say it is.
They realized they couldn't leave the game.
So
and
yeah,
so,
actually, it's very similar to a recent movie.
that's what I'm talking about.
Free Guy.
Free Guy.
Free
See,
Guy.
Save Ben. Free Guy. Same. So
Same.
let's just call it that.
There's no difference.
Let's just call it that. See, in my reality, it is Save Ben, but
All right, look, I'm with you, buddy.
that was the working title, clearly.
Sure it was.
So in Free Guy, this very same thing coming, to the people who are able to actually be in there for a minute, would be considered the same gods. How would you describe yourself? Well, only within the context of the vocabulary of the people within it. I think this is the saddest part of everything we're finding from the history of mankind. Sorry, humans, where there was clearly another intelligent civilization with a level of tech which was all completely destroyed. There's something like, I think, 8 different megalithic structures that are all scattered, just like Pupapunku, and there's more, where the excuse for these scatterings of these megalithic blocks was that scavengers took what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But hang on a minute, some of those blocks are 100 meters away, and the structure is gone. They didn't just disassemble the building where it stood, and it doesn't make any sense unless maybe something pushed them over, or was it some destruction. Even in Egypt, Mecca, there's vitrification on the outside of some of the monuments, which in the stories were told to have been exposed to a large weapon and being destroyed. And that heat that you would find in a nuclear explosion or thermonuclear explosion would do the same
intense.
thing.
It is intense, absolutely. That's actually a thing, right?
Yeah,
that's 100% correct.
Today, from Hiroshima, the people that were there and who were evaporated within the first millisecond of the blast became only a shadow on the ground or on the wall.
You know that is one of the most terrifying images.
Even there was an old man with a cane who was evaporated. That old man with the cane didn't even have the ability within the millisecond to have experienced the pain of it.
I know, right?
Before becoming evaporated.
I mean,
it's like the flash of a camera flash.
It's terrifying. I think it's terrifying anyway, in many ways.
Yeah. Well, welcome to an insight of all the things I've watched this week.
Yeah, no, that's right. But yeah, look, that's it though. And you're right. I mean, it's I don't know. I just feel that we're nowhere near understanding anything. Just to be perfectly frank, we have been told a whole bunch of half truths. The history, and what Dave just mentioned, these are clear examples of us not understanding or not knowing what went before at all. We have no idea.
That's right.
We are a species with amnesia. That's who we are. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And every time we go through an extinction level event, or maybe not extinction level, but certainly an event that causes a massive upheaval, catastrophe,
hourglassing event, yeah,
completely. We just, I mean, the vast majority of us, I mean, forget. We forget because, well, what you have to do is survive, right? That's what you have to do. You have to survive, and you survive, by focusing on the things that are important for survival, right? Which happen to be, well, what I'm going to eat, where am I going to eat tomorrow? What will I do?
Even if you worked in the Apple iPhone assembly plant,
yeah, you
still wouldn't be able to make one within 10 generations if you're surviving such a cataclysm.
Well, look, that's a really, really good point. You wouldn't. Because to
your point, it's not the primary thing you've got to remember.
Oh. Well, no. That's
right. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
So what happens, right? What happens is that, well, you just make do and you start again. You start, and in your mind, you're starting from nothing, and this is the stories that we're getting, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're starting from nothing, and you come up through wherever through the dark ages, through thousands of years between the civilization's downfall and the new civilization, and in between all the things that your ancestors knew and held dear and so forth have become myth.
That's right.
They're now no longer considered history because we forgot too much. We remember snippets here and there, but the rest we forgot. And I believe that happened many times. And I'm not the only one that says it. That's the thing, though. The Egyptians said this to Solon when he visited them. You Greeks are just children. What do you mean? Well, you're just children. You don't remember your history.
Wow.
You're
That's so pertinent right now.
Right?
Yeah.
We do remember. We know exactly what happened, and you only remember one flood. And because you only remember that one flood, that's why you're children. That's why you.
Oh wow!
Right. So, and that's the thing. And I'm not making this up. That's well.
No, right now, in the context of the conversation, my mind's blown.
Yeah. But I'm relaying this to you as the way it was told to Solon, the Athenian lawgiver, when he went to Egypt to visit the Egyptians. Right. We're just children. We're children. I mean, we can't really take it seriously, right? Because you still remember the history. And every time this happened, every time we had these events on the global scale, right? These cataclysmic events,
mm-hmm.
we forgot every time. That's why we have so many different stories. Right?
What do we forget, Mickey? Because I can't remember.
I know, right? We just don't. We can't remember it. Is it our fault? Well, no, it's not our fault, right? But you have to understand that there was no incentive for anyone to remember. There are, however, those that do remember, right?
Hang on.
Yeah. Okay. And they have access to the ancient manuscripts. They have access to the libraries, and they have access to the knowledge that is lost to us. They won't share it, because it's an advantage for them to keep it, well, theirs, to be very clear, right? But it's a truism to say that those people are the ones we have to fear and fight the most.
Yeah.
These are the people.
Yeah. And I just want to answer a question in the chat room.
Yeah, of course.
So nobody has raised what about UAPs, flat Earth, and Bigfoot. I only want to touch on UAPs just really quickly because they've already debunked flat Earth. Thank you very much, nobody. And Bigfoot is somehow connected in ways that it's difficult to imagine with UAPs. The UAP thing and the farce that was the hearing with plausible deniability on those investigating it, having only considered information that has come to hand after the committee was established, nothing historical, with a 30-year gap back to Project Blue Book, which they've ignored. Even going back further back to the 1947, they've just ignored. Even the sightings before we had powered flight, ignored. Even the crashed spaceship where they buried a body in the US before we had powered flight. Before we had any flight. And it wasn't a balloon either. All of those events were ignored. They pretty much just picked it up from 2014 onwards. And that's it. But their plausible deniability thing that just absolutely aggravates me, it gets under my skin, is only the public side of it. And it's not we don't get to see what's really being discussed. And I've got to say, how much of it is declarable as US tech and how much of it is anyone else's tech? And the last question, how much of it isn't any human-made tech? I think that's really important. If they're willing to ignore everything historically, did they reverse engineer anything or gain some tech? And now they're playing with it and making it visible to the US military in testing just to see what people see. I wonder how much of any of this is true.
So,
because it drives me nuts.
Yeah, so this is how I look. This is nobody as well in the chat room. What about you, Flat Earth and Bigfoot? Okay, let me talk about Flat Earth just for a second.
1 minute.
Here, right? Oh, geez, time flies. Let me not talk about Flat Earth. Every phenomenon, every mystery is connected to the next mystery. They're all interlocked. They're all interlinked, even if not obviously so. They always are. That's what 10 years. 12 years really of intensive research for this radio has shown, and both Dave and I have been interested and been researching these things for several decades before we ever came on the air to talk to you all. So there's the music, but so it's all connected, and there is no hiding from that fact.
We'll see you after the very short break. Take the time to donate. And after the break, we'll be coming back with Shiny Side Out and talking about prophecies, part 7.